Good afternoon, everybody. First of all, let me apologise for the debacle yesterday with the live feed. Unfortunately, technical issues prevented us going ahead yesterday, but hopefully you will join us again next month when we'll be holding another Facebook chat. We did take the questions that people had left, and I'm going to try to answer some of those today. The first one is from Michelle. Well, the first three are from Michelle Blacker, and the touch on laptops, what is being done to assist children to take practical sessions. And the third one is Year 7s and the ability relation for children within the classroom. Michelle, yes, laptops. It's very concerning, the news that's gone out over the weekend about the reduction in laptops. I have to agree with you that there's a lot of children out there who don't have access to the digital work, the laptops that they need, especially if they have to go into remote learning. Just a little bit of background on this. At the beginning of the pandemic, obviously, the government allowed the issue of laptops to vulnerable children or children that were disadvantaged because they didn't have access to laptops. At that time, the children covered were Year 10, disadvantaged pupils, children with a social worker attached, and care leavers. Now, that finished in June, and in September we were notified that they were fetching in a new system. And we as an authority notified the DfE, the Department for Education, of the schools that were LA maintained. I have to say that academy schools need to work with the DfE directly. We don't actually have anything to do with the academy chains. They work directly with the DfE. At this moment in time, we don't know what the situation is going to be, but my concern is that media reports have come out that there's a reduction in the number of laptops that are going to be made available to schools to give to pupils. And my problem with that is that as we move forward through this pandemic, we're going to find more children having to work from home, and they will need to be able to remote learning. And if schools don't have the equipment available to send out to these children, once again, the children that are most disadvantaged are going to carry on being disadvantaged. You can be assured that I and colleagues will be keeping an eye on this. And once we have an idea of how it's going to affect us locally, we will be doing what we can to make sure that our children get the best help that we can give them. Meanwhile, officers are going to still support schools to ensure that education resources, digital and paper-based, for children who must stay at home, continue to meet statutory requirements. Now, the second question you put forward was what is being done to sort children's ability to take part in practical sessions in high school. Well, schools, we're in a difficult situation, aren't we, Michelle? We've got a pandemic. We need to social distance. We need to be keeping everything clean, and it's difficult, really. And I know that risk assessments will cover aspects such as social distancing in classes and classrooms, cleansing of equipment, and the reduction of potential infection and contamination during and beyond lessons. So I'm positive schools are doing all they can to offer the best learning experience, but in these difficult times, there's constraints on how they can present this. I know schools work very closely with our local public health to make sure that things are as they should be with the guidance. So hopefully, eventually, practical lessons can return to something close to their previous role in due course. So, Michelle, third question. Year 7s at this point would normally be placed in classes. that are ability related. However, at that moment, they are in mixed groups. It's a school's choice. You must bear in mind that as an authority, we can advise, we can help, but at the end of the day, it's the school's choice how to organise their classes. And it's not always, and need not be, based on ability streaming. The curriculum offered for pupils should be at least as ambitious as that laid out in the national curriculum, and it's the responsibility of school leaders to ensure that the quality of education offered to all pupils, regardless of ability or background, allows them to meet and benefit from that ambitions. If you are concerned, or if parents have any concerns about their child's education, you must speak to the school about the matter, because it is in their hands. Thank you for those questions, Michelle. I hope the answers were okay for you. We'll now move on to a question from Kathy Welsh. What criteria should schools use to advise staff to self-isolate after a positive case in school? Well, initially, if there's a case reported in school, the school should seek help and advice, and who has been a close contact. Help can come from the DFE helpline, but I know our public health colleagues locally have helped schools through situations like this. And there's a lot of different situations throwing themselves up, as you'll understand, as we move forward through this pandemic. Different situations are throwing themselves up constantly that need to be looked at and dealt with in different ways. The criteria for being a close contact is actually defined on the government website, but the main considerations are whether someone has had face-to-face contact within 1 metre, or had skin-to-skin physical contact, or been within 2 metres for more than 15 minutes. And this is what a school will base its decisions on. Thank you for that, Kathy. I hope that answers your question. I now have a couple of questions from Linda Machin. You've sent 2 questions in. The first one: can I refuse to let my child go to school without being fined if the school are not following social distancing, i.e. staggered start-finish times, keeping year bubbles apart, one-way system? My children don't feel safe. Any concerns you have about this COVID secure environment, you need to take up with the school. Each school is in a different situation. So some will be able to do all the things that are necessary, but some schools may not be able to. We are constantly giving guidance to schools about what they can do. And we are advising all schools to constantly update their risk assessments monthly, ideally monthly, because things are being thrown up each time. And I think it's a good idea that the school does the risk assessments on a regular basis. With regard to the fine, this unfortunately we have no control over. That is up to each individual school. Whether they do, and they'll judge it on merit, I would imagine. So unfortunately there's nothing we as an authority can do in respect of that. Your second question: we have had several cases of confirmed COVID-19 at school, yet only the children sitting next to them have been made to isolate. Well, once again, each situation is different, and public health teams work constantly with schools to assess who needs to be isolated and if there's a confirmed case in a school. We do try to limit the number of children isolating, because obviously their education is important. So the teams will work through the details of each case, and it's often possible to control the spread of infection by only isolating some children. Of course, the health of our school communities, children, staff must come first, and if needs be, a whole class maybe, or a whole year group even, may need to isolate in order to make sure everybody's safe. Thank you for those questions, Linda. I would add, by the way, that it's important to note that whilst we are seeing cases in schools, we are not seeing a lot of school outbreaks or widespread transmission. Anyway, thank you, Linda, for that. The next question is from Louise Harrison, and this one is, I'm worried about Year 6 SATs. Will there be a change in the curriculum to help children get through these exams as they miss so much schooling? As yet, we haven't had any indication from government if they'll be making any changes in respect of the curriculum to be followed by pupils in Year 6 or the format of next year's SATs, but hopefully we will be finding out in the near future, and schools obviously will be notified. Thank you, Louise, for that question. Right, a question from Christine Gore. What is your forward planning to support children with profound and multiple learning disabilities from age 2 to 8? Well, we keep provision under constant review of our special schools in the Wakefield area, and at the moment we're working towards increasing places as appropriate. Additional places have been created previously for key areas of need. We take it very seriously that we need to make sure that we have that support available for these young people and children. At the moment, we're currently working on creating some additional capacity from 2021, and we have a provision document which will be linked to the SEND strategy and will be available on the local offer once completed. Thank you, Christine. I hope that answers your question. Next question is from Cass Jefferson. This is about ventilation. The guidance says buildings are to be ventilated and windows kept open. As we head into winter and it gets colder, will the LA be encouraging the relaxation of uniform rules? Well, to be honest, Cass, yes, I agree with you. I had this raised at another meeting I attended a few days ago about how we will cope with this. I mean, the advice is to keep well ventilated in the classroom, which is to prevent the spread of the disease, the COVID-19. But certainly I take on board the worries people have. I wouldn't want my children sat getting cold, and I don't think being cold is conducive with learning. So as an authority, as me speaking personally, I will be pursuing this and seeing if we can encourage schools to relax the uniform policy, which as it sits now with individual schools, not with us, but I will be asking if we can encourage schools to look at this and make sure children keep warm during the winter months. Thank you for that, Cass, that question. I'm now going to move on to Carla Hewitt-Forey, who has asked a question about school up meals, which I suppose in a way follows on from the previous question, because obviously coming up to winter, children do need to have or should be having hot meals. However, I can appreciate schools are working to ensure that they maintain a COVID-secure environment while still meeting health and hygiene regulations relating to food preparation and distribution. So it is a difficult situation for schools. Their priority has to be to minimise the risk to staff and their pupils' health from COVID, and this may mean that they have to change the routines and practices for the time being. As an authority, we can't make schools produce hot meals. That is up to the schools. The schools have to assess the risk of providing that, and unfortunately it could be that hot meals they cannot provide them safely at this moment in time. Thank you, Carla. We'll now move on to a question from Claire Smith. Will there be any plans to reduce class sizes by possibly putting high school kids on a rota system? Public transport, teenage bravado and classes of 30 plus is a recipe for disaster. For early years and Key Stage 1, which are the younger ones, I know you're talking about the older ones, but the younger ones, the government class size pledge means that there can be no more than 30 pupils in each class, so that is fixed. For all the other classes, the number of pupils in a class is at the school's discretion. However, to maintain a COVID-secure environment and to enable teaching to go as close as normal as possible, I don't believe schools are likely to enlarge class sizes. Once again, this is down to the guidance from government. It's once again up to the individual schools to look at that guidance and determine how best to move forward to ensure that they have a COVID-secure environment for not only their pupils but also their staff. I hope that answers your question, Claire. Thank you very much. Now the question from Lisa Jane Partington. Is it acceptable for school to bully a parent into off-rolling a child because the child was following GP advice to social distance and the school can't provide social distancing? Now, whilst I can't comment on individual situations, it's important that schools work closely with parents to maximise pupils' attendance. As an authority, we don't support off-rolling of any children, and I think as people in general, we cannot support bullying. So I hope that answers that question for you, Lisa. The next question comes from Amanda Walker. What are your views about the GCSE exams going ahead in the summer? Now, we know what about the debacle last year. Very distressing for young people, the way it was handled. Lots of children were upset, they're distraught, traumatised even. But this matter now sits with the DfE, over which we have no control at a local level. But I would hope that they will review what happened last year. At the end of the day, the teachers know their pupils best, and I think there's a way to move forward with this without going through all this algorithm and the things that made it so wrong last year. And hopefully we'll have a much better system in place by the summer of next year. Thank you, Amanda. You also have another question, and that is, seeing lots of people on school buses with no masks on. How is this being monitored and enforced? The dedicated school buses are not subject to social distancing, and wearing of face masks is not compulsory, unlike public transport where it is. Now, this is once again DfE, Department of Education guidance, and people are following this as we move forward. As a wider range of passengers will be transported, the guidance states that public bus services are subject to social distancing and wearing face masks, so any children using public bus services need to wear face masks. But as I say, on dedicated school buses, that is not compulsory. So I hope that answers your questions, Amanda. Thank you very much. And now we have a final question from Nick Lawton. Will schools, colleges, etc. be subject to Ofsted during this academic year? We are expecting formal inspections of school to recommence in January 2021. Thank you everyone for sending questions. Once again, sorry that the live session was cancelled, but I hope the responses that you've got answer the queries that you've made, and we look forward to seeing you next month.